The revolving doors of Halcyon Capital whispered shut behind me as I stepped into the marble lobby, the familiar scent of polished stone and faint espresso in the air. Manhattan was just waking up, the Hudson River glinting in the early light beyond the glass facade. I nodded at Robert, the security guard who had greeted me every morning for over a decade, and slipped into the executive elevator. Another day. Another stack of risk reports, another invisible thread holding the company together. By 6:45 a.m., I was in my corner office on the 40th floor, coffee steaming on the windowsill. I powered up my screens, scanning the markets, flipping through overnight reports with the automatic precision that came from 23 years in this tower. Spreadsheets, dashboards, volatility indexes, each number a pulse I could read without thinking. Stability had always been my job, the quiet work behind the glittering face of Halcyon Capital. Then, at 7:02 a.m., everything tilted. An email pinged in the corner of my screen. The subject line was Clinical Notice of Benefit Termination. I clicked, and a single sentence filled the window. Your 4.5-meter pension has been terminated effective immediately. No greeting, no explanation. My gaze slid to the CC field and froze. SEC Gov. A chime from my phone followed almost instantly. Halcyon corporate account under temporary hold, Meridian Bank. My hands did not tremble. They went utterly still. The same stillness that had gripped me the morning Lehman collapsed, when millions of dollars in derivatives spun across my screens like falling glass. I breathed once, slowly, as if my body already understood that panic was useless. I glanced toward the city below. Taxis moved like yellow markers on a circuit board. Pedestrians hustled past the plaza with their coffees, unaware that a storm had just broken above their heads. Someone in this building, no. One man thought he could erase 23 years of loyalty with a single digital signature. Someone thought I would accept this quietly, negotiate a smaller settlement, or simply vanish into early retirement. They didn't know me. I reached for my phone and opened my private email, my mind already moving with the cold precision of risk management. Every instinct told me the game had begun, and the first move would be mine. By the time I rose from my chair, the city was fully awake, and so was I, sharper than I had felt in years, carrying a silence heavy enough to shatter an empire. I walked to the door, ready to begin the preparations that would lead to my next call. I leaned back in my chair, letting the coldness of the morning's betrayal seep through me. My eyes drifted to the photo on my desk, a frozen moment from 12 years ago. Emilio was blowing out 9 candles on a cake I never tasted because I was in Tokyo, negotiating credit swaps at 3 in the morning. I had told myself back then that all these sacrifices were temporary, that the next deal, the next bonus, the next year would give us the life we deserved. Somehow, 23 years slipped by, and my son had learned to celebrate without me. My mind wandered further, to the September of 2008. The trading floor had been a battlefield, a symphony of phones ringing and grown men holding their heads in despair. Damien had grabbed my arm so hard he left bruises, his voice rough with panic. Luciana, you're the only one who can keep us alive. For 96 hours straight, I ate nothing but cold takeout, lived on espresso, and rebuilt the firm's entire risk structure from the ground up. When the Federal Reserve extended our credit line, he hugged me in front of the board and called me family. That night, he went home to a bonus of $50 million. I went home to an empty apartment and a plaque that still sits in a storage box. That word family echoed now like a mockery. My real family had fractured under the weight of this place. Emilio's father had left 5 years ago, saying he was tired of being married to a shadow I told myself the long hours and missed dinners were investments in our future. But loyalty without leverage was just another form of servitude, and Halcyon had cashed out my devotion without a second thought. A quiet fire kindled in my chest, slow but steady. I had spent years managing risk for other people, building safety nets they didn't even know they had. Now, my own instincts sharpened with the same precision. I would not beg, and I would not vanish. I turned to my computer and began pulling every contract, every amendment I had ever touched, my fingers moving with a new, calm certainty. Somewhere in those pages lay the seed I had planted long ago, waiting for the perfect storm. By mid-morning, I was walking briskly along Lexington Avenue, my coat pulled tight against the wind. The world outside bustled with normalcy, coffee carts steaming, taxis honking, but inside me, everything had gone silent, like the pause before a storm. I pushed through the revolving door into the familiar marble lobby of Sophia Calderon's office. She had been my lawyer for over a decade, the only person who had ever read the fine print of my life with as much care as I did. Her office smelled faintly of leather and old paper, a sanctuary for people like me who understood that power was never in the headlines, it lived in the footnotes. "You're early," Sophia said, motioning me to sit across from her polished mahogany desk. "They cut it," I said simply. 48 hours before payout, $4.5 million. She didn't blink. "Send me the email." I slid my phone across the desk. She read it once, then looked up with the same cold focus I felt building in my own chest. "And the SEC is copied. Interesting. That's not just betrayal. That's a signal someone inside wants this to blow open. Do I still have the leverage we built?" My voice was steady, though my heart pressed against my ribs. Sophia swiveled to her filing cabinet and withdrew a thick folder bound with a faded blue ribbon. "Amendment 11, Section 19.4, she said, placing it in front of me. "Page 47. You remember it?" I nodded, though seeing the exact words in print sent a ripple down my spine. Any unilateral revocation of a vested pension triggers immediate equity conversion of 12% of outstanding common shares to the beneficiary. She tapped the next paragraph with her manicured nail. "And the CEO personally guarantees all corporate debt in the event this clause is activated. Silver Rock Bank is holding $200 million in those guarantees. If you pull this lever, he loses the company, the assets, and likely his name." The room seemed to shrink. I traced the lines of the clause with my fingertip, feeling the weight of every late night and missed birthday embedded in the ink. For a moment, doubt flickered. Was this justice or the first step toward becoming the very thing I despised? Sophia leaned back. "If you trigger this, Luciana, there's no going back. He loses everything publicly." I closed the folder gently, the decision forming in the quiet steel of my thoughts as I prepared for the first real move. I waited until 9:15 a.m., giving HR just enough time to settle into their morning routine, then dialed the extension from memory. My voice was smooth, every syllable measured. "Good morning, Jason. I'm calling about the notice I received regarding my pension." A pause, the faint click of a headset, and then the polished voice of Halcyon's 32-year-old HR director came through. "Ah, yes, Miss Varela. I assure you this decision wasn't made lightly. It's part of a broader cash flow optimization strategy." I let him talk, murmuring neutral acknowledgments, while my recording software captured every word. "Temporary adjustment," he repeated, his tone rehearsed. "The company is navigating a period of market volatility, and certain legacy obligations require re-evaluation. Of course, this is all in the best interest of the firm." I almost smiled. Market volatility, temporary adjustment, words designed to sound clean while stripping decades of loyalty in one stroke. "I see," I said softly. "Thank you for clarifying. Please send me all supporting documentation for this decision." He hesitated, then agreed. When the line went dead, I saved the file in 3 separate locations: evidence, ammunition, insurance. That night, the city glittered beyond the windows of my riverside penthouse, its reflection spilling across my dining table where a single box sat, sealed in aged tape. My hands lingered on the cardboard for a moment before I slid it open. The scent of old paper and ink rose like a ghost from 2009. Inside lay neatly bound documents, each page a fragment of the life I had built and the hedge I had crafted for this exact betrayal. I lifted Amendment 11 and flipped to page 47, my fingers tracing the familiar language. 15 years ago, I had written this clause in the quiet hours after the 2008 collapse, a weapon disguised as bureaucracy. I never wanted to use it, but tonight it pulsed with quiet power in my hands. I stacked the papers neatly, slid the recording of HR's call onto the pile, and felt the first true calm I'd known since dawn. Tomorrow, I would move my piece across the board, and the real game would begin. At 4:47 p.m., my cursor hovered over the send button for one steady breath. Then I clicked. The notice to Meridian Trust left my outbox, carrying 15 years of quiet preparation in a single email. The apartment was still except for the hum of the refrigerator and the muffled rhythm of traffic below. Minutes later, the first confirmation arrived: equity conversion request received. Processing initiated. By evening, the SEC portal flashed its automatic alert: ownership change pending. I refreshed twice. The glow of the screen reflected in the glass behind me. Around 10, Meridian flagged the transaction internally: corporate reserve allocation, pending verification. My hand stayed steady on the mouse. Outside, the city glittered, headlights crawling along the West Side Highway, oblivious to the silent shift in power happening above. Near midnight, Sophia called. Her voice was calm but electric. "It's moving. By morning, you'll be Halcyon's largest individual shareholder." A new message appeared soon after from a compliance contact. Rumor spreading Damien knows. I leaned back, letting the quiet wash over me. Damien Crowhurst had lived his career assuming loyalty was permanent, that I would absorb every slight and sacrifice until the end. Tonight, he would finally understand the cost of underestimating me. The city outside my window pulsed with indifferent light. I saved the final confirmations, backed everything up to an encrypted drive, and closed my laptop. My chest felt lighter than it had in years, a strange calm replacing the static of constant vigilance. I whispered to the empty room, "I'm done being prey." Sleep wouldn't come, but clarity had. In a few hours, I would walk into Halcyon not as an employee, but as something entirely different. Dawn would find me ready to face the man who believed I had no teeth and show him the silent edge I had kept hidden for 15 years. The executive floor hummed with tension as I stepped off the elevator. Assistants whispered in corners, eyes darting toward Damien's office. Patricia, his longtime assistant, appeared instantly. "He's waiting for you," she said quietly. Inside, Damien's marble-clad corner office gleamed under the Hudson's morning light. He rose with a smile that didn't touch his eyes. "Luciana," he said smoothly, "I'm glad you came. There's been a misunderstanding. We can fix this quietly. I stayed where I was. You revoked a vested pension. That's not a misunderstanding." His expression tightened. "I've already filed an emergency motion to freeze the shares you think are yours. Corporate sabotage has consequences. I could end your career with one call." I tilted my head. Destroy me or delay the inevitable? The charm slipped. He straightened, voice sharpening. "You've overplayed your hand. I built this firm. I won't let you burn it down over a technicality." I reached into my bag, placed my phone on his desk, and pressed play. From the tiny speaker came his own voice from a 2009 board meeting. I've reviewed every page of Amendment 11 personally. Every provision has my full support. Ms. Varela has crafted exactly what we need to protect the firm's interests. Damien froze. His face drained as the recording played on, each word another crack in the facade he had worn for decades. You signed every page, I said evenly, including page 47. You had your lawyers. You had 15 years to read the words that would decide today. He sank into his chair, hand trembling slightly against the leather armrest. For the first time in all my years at Halcyon, he had nothing to say. I picked up my phone and turned toward the door, leaving his silence to echo off the marble walls. Behind me, the office that once radiated untouchable authority felt suddenly small and airless. The boardroom awaited, and the real reckoning was only moments away. The boardroom's glass walls reflected the gray Manhattan skyline, the city sprawling behind a table full of uneasy faces. 13 directors sat in rigid silence, their pens and tablets poised like shields. I stood at the head of the oval table, the weight of 23 years condensed into my next words. I hold 12% of Halcyon's voting shares. I began, and I'm here to present 3 actions to protect this company and its employees. A ripple of whispers moved around the table as I spoke each one first. All terminated pensions will be fully restored with 12% interest. Second, Damien Crowhurst resigns as CEO, effective immediately. Third, we establish a $100 million employee protection fund, drawn from executive bonuses. Harrison Wells, the lead independent director, cleared his throat. Luciana, these measures. They are not suggestions, I said, sliding the signed amendment forward. In 2009, you approved this. These actions are triggered automatically under the bylaws. Ignoring them puts every one of you at personal risk. Before anyone could respond, the doors opened and 3 people in dark suits entered. Their badges read Silver Rock Bank. Apologies for the interruption. The lead banker said, "We are here regarding Mr. Crowhurst's personal guarantees on Halcyon's $200 million credit facility. Due to the change in ownership structure, these guarantees are now being called. Immediate payment or collateral is required." The room fractured. One director dropped his pen. Another let out a low whistle. Damien lurched to his feet, his voice cracking. "This is a private meeting. You can't just—" The banker cut him off. "Your covenant allows access in the event of material adverse change. That threshold has been met." Chaos erupted. Some directors looked stricken. A few leaned back, quietly relieved the reckoning had finally arrived. I didn't need to raise my voice. I simply stood, letting the full weight of the moment settle over the room as Damien gripped the table's edge, his knuckles white. For the first time, he looked truly small under the skyline he once believed he owned. And I knew the final vote was already sealed. The vote took less than 5 minutes, but its echo felt like it rolled through the entire 40-story tower. One by one, the directors raised their hands, the motion to remove Damien Crowhurst passing with an overwhelming majority. Gerald Thornton abstained, his lips pressed into a thin, bitter line. Harrison Wells recorded the result, voice steady but almost relieved. "Effective immediately," he said. "Mr. Crowhurst is removed as Chief Executive Officer of Halcyon Capital. Interim leadership transfers to the board until further notice." Damien's chair screeched against the marble as he stood, color draining from his face. He opened his mouth to speak, but the conference room doors swung open again. Silver Rock's lead banker reappeared with a folder in hand. "Asset seizure orders have been issued," he said. "The Hamptons property, Aspen Lodge, and yacht are now under bank control. Additional assets will be evaluated over the next 48 hours. Damien stumbled back as if struck. His empire, the symbols of his untouchable life, was unraveling in real time. I felt no need to gloat. The moment was heavy enough without words. Then, as if the air itself conspired to close the circle, my phone buzzed. An email from the SEC, subject line in bold, formal investigation initiated. Halcyon Capital Pension and Compliance Review. I tilted the screen toward the room. This, I said quietly, is only the beginning. The directors avoided Damien's gaze. Patricia appeared in the doorway with building security, her eyes low. He tried to brush past them with the remnants of dignity, but they flanked him anyway, guiding him down the hallway he had once ruled like a private kingdom. Through the glass walls, I watched his reflection shrink as he passed the reception desk and disappeared into the elevator, the city lights glinting on his rumpled suit. The room exhaled all at once, a mixture of relief and disbelief for me. The silence that followed was sharper than any applause. The fight I had carried for years was ending, but an unfamiliar hollowness settled in its place, trailing me as I prepared to leave the boardroom for the last time. The morning after the boardroom vote, I woke to sunlight spilling across my kitchen table, not the hum of my office monitors. My laptop sat closed, a silent witness to a life I'd spent decades fighting to protect. For the first time in 23 years, I didn't have an inbox demanding my attention. I sipped my coffee slowly, tasting freedom and the faint bitterness of everything I had left behind. By evening, I was seated across from Emilio at our favorite little Italian place near Riverside. He had insisted on dinner to celebrate, though the word felt strange on my tongue. He was taller now, shoulders broader than I remembered, his eyes a mirror of my own in their quiet watchfulness. "I'm proud of you, Mom," he said, breaking a piece of bread in half. "You didn't let them erase you." The words landed heavier than he knew. I smiled, but inside I felt that hollow echo again. I had won utterly, decisively, but at a cost I hadn't fully counted. Years of missed birthdays and lonely nights had been traded for a single act of precision justice. It was victory, yes, but threaded with a grief that refused to leave. Later that week, an email arrived from a business school in Boston. They were hosting a conference on ethical corporate governance and wanted me to speak about the Halcyon case. I read the invitation twice, staring at the cursor blinking against the white screen. Part of me wanted to decline, to disappear into anonymity and finally live a quiet life that didn't revolve around contracts and consequences. Another part of me felt something stir and urge to turn my private war into something larger, something that might protect people who would never sit in corner offices. I closed my eyes, the decision forming quietly inside me as the city lights began to blink against the evening sky. 6 months passed, and the skyline outside my Riverside windows felt different, as if the city itself had exhaled. Halcyon Capital had not collapsed under the weight of its scandal. It had transformed. Catherine Hayes, now officially CEO, steered the firm with a steady hand and a conscience the building had never known. Employees whispered about the new culture: transparent, accountable, even humane. My name appeared in the press more than I expected, though not as the Avenger I had once imagined. They called it the Varela Clause, and other firms quietly began to copy it, embedding protections for employees who had spent lifetimes believing loyalty was enough. I had no office now, no corporate badge. My days were lighter, my mornings my own. Yet the victory felt incomplete until I chose what to do with it. That choice came when a nonprofit in Boston reached out, asking me to join as a strategic advisor. Their mission was simple but powerful: teach young professionals how to protect themselves, how to read the fine print, question what seems routine, and understand that the law could be a shield as well as a sword. I accepted. The work was quieter than the boardroom battles of my past, but each seminar, each one-on-one session with a student, felt like laying a new brick in a foundation I wished I'd had at 22. One afternoon, I sat across from a young intern in a sunlit co-working space. She frowned over a thick employment contract, highlighter poised midair. "Most of this is boilerplate," she said uncertainly. I smiled, sliding the pages toward her. "Always read every page, especially the ones they call boilerplate." She laughed softly, then leaned in to read. In that moment, I felt the weight of the past 6 months settle into something lighter, almost luminous. I had taken the sharpest wound of my life and turned it outward, shaping a legacy that might outlive boardrooms and headlines. As the girl's pen moved across the page, I realized my war was truly over, not because I had destroyed someone else, but because I had built something that would protect others long after I was gone.